Okay, Kibera Muriuki. I work with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and I'm going to take you through GMP, which are good manufacturing practices, the HACCP, Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point, and the Code of Practice for Animal Feed Industry. You note that food safety is very key, and during tea time, you have taken some food of animal origin. I've seen some pieces of chicken. You have taken something else, a sausage. So this presentation is very important. Yeah, so I'll just take you through a brief overview, the prerequisite programs, things that you need to have in place as you are doing manufacturing of the various products and hazards associated with animal feed, and then the HACCP process and the code of practice. Briefly, this was presented by Dr. Mutua, just to mention in brief, is that there are various types of animal feed products, which include the supplements, the complete feeds, which are compounded, animal food, which is basically the pet food, mineral supplements, premixes, and additives. And in Kenya, we didn't get the information for East Africa and the large areas. But in Kenya, we have what we call standardization mark. For the manufacturers who are making products in Kenya, it is mandatory for those products to be certified by Kenya Bureau of Standards. So around 45% of these manufacturers are concentrated within Nairobi. So for you who are selling products, you know Nairobi region area is where most of the manufacturers are. And this Nairobi region contains a number of counties, that is Nairobi itself, Kiambu, Machakos, Kajiado, around that area. Then the next area where we have concentration of those manufacturers is South Rift region. South Rift region is Nakuru area. So we have Nakuru, Narok, Bomet, Kericho, Barigo, around that area has 30% of these products. And then Mount Kenya region with 16%. Mount Kenya region is Nyeri, Murang'a, Laikipia, Meru, Embu, those areas. So if you look at Nairobi and Mount Kenya region, that's around 60% of the concentration of the manufacturers. The rest, not much. Lake region, Coast region, 1%. Northeastern region, very few. I don't know anybody from Northeastern. Camels don't feed, don't take animal feed. GMPs, one very key thing that you need to have in mind is the prerequisite programs. You can see that that photo there of manufacturing premises. You can see the people are properly dressed. The floor is clean, epoxy. The equipment are away from the walls. So these are kind of the things that we need to have in our premises. Very important that we ensure we provide quality feed, because once there's a quality feed, it leads to safe products. And this we ensure by eliminating the various food safety hazards. And ensuring there is the food safety in the feed industry is not a responsibility of the manufacturers alone. It is everybody within the value chain, right from the farm, those people who do production of the raw materials for the animal feed, the suppliers, the raw material, the compounders, truckers, those people who do the transportation. So that you don't go transport cement, then the next load is maize jam. It is very important that we have proper controls. Retailers as well. we have seen a lot of issues with how retailers handle these products, the storage conditions, mixing non-medicated product with the medicated products. So it is very important that everybody within the value chain is aware of their responsibilities with respect to food safety. And the others are farmers. Yes, you note as a manufacturer, you are taking very necessary care not to have high levels of aflatoxin in your feed, but the farmer is feeding his or her chicken with a rotten maize. So you have done your part on one end, but the farmer is doing other things. And also how they store products in the market, in the stores is very important to ensure feed safety. So everybody is responsible for ensuring feed safety. And for this to happen, of course, GMPs, good manufacturing practices, are key. And it involves everybody within the value chain, like we mentioned, and right from the facilities, the procedures that are put in place should be able to ensure that at the end, we have products that do not have the food safety hazards. And there's HACCP, the Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. That is very key, very important for everybody within the value chain, that you need to analyze the hazards that can be present in your products. And then you have control measures to reduce, to either prevent, reduce, or eliminate all those food safety hazards. And prerequisite programs, these are the programs you put in place before you establish the HACCP plan. We'll go through them for ease of understanding. And prerequisite programs are just normally the basic things that we do. Like, for example, the premises where you put the meal, it should not be in a dusty environment, should have adequate space, should not be where there's high levels of air pollution. Right from how we identify the location where we are going to put up our establishment is very important. Yeah, water supply, of course, the water must be adequate and potable water. That is water that is not contaminated, that you can drink. You know, when you are doing feed pelleting, you need water. So you don't just use any water. The water must be potable. Personnel hygiene, very key, including the personnel hygiene facilities, toilets, washrooms. They are very key. Of course, people must be clean, short nails, don't work with jewelries and those kind of things. Air quality also very important. That the premises, the ventilation must be very good. Of course, monitoring temperatures and also lighting. Lighting is another thing that is very important, because for you to see a nut, a bolt in what? In cotton seed cake, you need to have proper lighting so that you can be able to identify some of those things. The other thing with lighting is that the bulbs should be properly covered so that in case it breaks, those pieces do not get into the product. Equipment, how it is designed, the material should not be corrosive, very important. Yeah, of course, a proper cleaning schedule, a proper maintenance schedule, good pest control, and we don't want to see cats anywhere in your premises. Black cats, white cats, colored cats. We don't want to see those things because they are major source of salmonella. So pest control is very important. The other thing you need to ensure is you control the birds. You get to a go down and on top there are big nests. Yeah, many nests for many birds. So you have to ensure that you do proper pest control. Waste management also very important. The drains, once you wash off the floor, storage, how you store your products. We have seen some very squeezed storage facilities, stacking of sacks, which go up to 10 feet or 11 feet high. Others are leaning on the walls, almost breaking down your walls. Of course, how you do storage, you have to ensure that there's a clear passage around those sacks. Transport also very important. The kind of trucks that you use, they should be covered, they should not be open, so that in case of rain, your products do not get soaked. And also to ensure that you consider the previous load, what was transported before you transport the animal feed, to prevent cross-contaminations and the carryovers. And also approved suppliers, you must ensure that you know your suppliers. You vet them. You need to have a criteria for monitoring your suppliers so that you have proper controls. Then process controls and use of additives and medications. Yeah, I'll not go into details of these ones, but very important that you have those nice buildings and facilities for doing your production work. Floors should be, of course, well kept, easily cleanable. I know after some use, you use trolleys and forklifts, and the floor becomes worse than a road with a lot of potholes. And because you deal with the dry products, you think that is okay. No, it is not okay. You have to ensure that the floors are easily cleanable. Lighting and ventilation also very important. And also the issues to do with the water supply. Equipment, very important. And this one I may speak directly to people who do mineral supplements. You know, those equipment, the metal parts are highly corrosive. So you find that at the end of it all, animals are feeding on metal parts, which are coming from your equipment. Others use shovels, the spades. After some time, you find a normal spade is equal to a tablespoon. Where would the rest of the part be? It been consumed by livestock. So we have to ensure that we take control of our equipment. Then, of course, they have to be properly cleaned and maintained. Personnel, very important that the people who are engaged in those production facilities are properly trained. The issue of picking the brother who has just finished class 8 and has said education is enough should be a thing of the past. We need to ensure that we engage properly trained personnel to work in those facilities. And then very key that you should not consume food or take any drink or use of tobacco in those processing facilities. So the way you produce animal feed is the way you produce animal feed. Very important that we maintain those controls for food safety, so that we don't see people seated on finished product and consuming cigarettes. Then raw materials, right from how they are packaged, very important that you consider the packaging of the raw materials, how you handle them, how they are transported. Of course, you need to avoid exposing them to a lot of heat, moisture, those kind of things. The ingredients, additives should be in proper containers. And raw materials, ensure that raw materials are sampled and tested. You note that in feed formulation, you must work from the quality of the raw materials. Without proper analysis of the raw materials, you may not get the right formulation that you need. What was happening 20 years ago, where you would find people writing formulations on pieces of papers, those things are long gone. you must analyze your raw materials and use proper softwares for animal feed formulation. So raw materials analysis is very important. Of course, in production, you need to have these proper formulations, proper procedures for production, how you are going to do transfer, filling instructions in process control methods. They must be properly documented and provided to staff. And staff must be trained on those procedures. Of course, the equipment, all those things need to be proper laboratory controls. We have been insisting that you need to be analyzing your products. Okay, 5 minutes remaining. Okay, thank you. Of course, you need to analyze your products. You need to establish laboratories or testing facilities, or have access to testing facilities and keep the necessary records. Labeling is another very key thing, and labeling requirements are provided for in the respective animal feed standards. So you have to get to the standard to check what is required for to be in the product labels. But as a bare minimum, need to have the name of the product, the net content, the manufacturer and where they are located, the list of ingredients, direction for use of those products, the batch number or the lot number, date of manufacture, date of expiry, and storage conditions. Then, of course, you need to have a complaint register, and you need to track all those complaints. Then the hazard associated with the feed, you can see that image. Those are, that's what, yellow maize, that has some molds. And the hazards are categorized into 3. They are the biological hazards, chemical hazards, and physical hazards that you need to pay attention to. And these hazards come from, one, the raw materials. And it's very important that you note some of the raw materials we use in feed are byproducts of another process. Let's say sunflower. Those cakes are a product of sunflower oil production. So the sunflower oil producer may not pay so much attention to the byproducts. But in your case, those byproducts are your raw materials. So it is very important that you note that there could be major sources of contamination from the way those byproducts are handled at the farm level. Then carryovers, of course, from medicated to non-medicated products, and some could be as a result of sabotage, like use of melanine. Chemical hazards, some of them are dioxins, mycotoxins, heavy metals, veterinary drugs residues. Dioxins, we know them, and some people feed their livestock with the clay. That clay, I see it being sold somewhere in Gilgil. So we have to be careful with some of those products because they contain high levels of dioxins. Then mycotoxins, the very important one is aflatoxin B1, but of course the others, ochratoxin and fumonicins and others. Then the most important one, like I've just mentioned, is aflatoxin B1 because it ends up in milk. So you have to, any feed that you are feeding lactating cows, have to be very careful with aflatoxin levels. Heavy metals, of course, right from the raw materials, things like arsenic, mercury, cadmium. And you know, very interesting with the livestock is that there is what is called bioaccumulation or biomagnification, where those heavy metals accumulate in the fat tissues of those animals. Then veterinary drug residues, these ones are obvious because they create resistances in the other medicines that you take. Yeah, so they affect they affect the medicines you. And then organochlorines. These ones are from the pesticides. Very important. Like we said, the feed safety is an entire value chain thing, because the farmer who is producing sunflower may not have in mind that the byproducts will go to feed, then they'll end up at the table. And as the people in the industry, you need to pay attention to what is happening in the field. Micro hazards, some of them, of course, right from the pasture. For those who do grazing in the field, if you have an animal that has given birth, ensure that there is no other livestock that feeds on that ground, because like as you all know, the placenta contains very high levels of brucella. Salmonella, this is another major one, right from how we handle the feed. Some of us are using cats to control pests. There are a lot of birds in our facilities. So salmonella is another major one. Endoparasites, there's something there. What is that? We could be having these things in our stomachs. Yeah? These are tapeworm. And we have to pay attention to these hazards. Then HACCP is a system that you have to put in place to ensure that you are able to control these hazards. It has 12 steps. The 5 steps are preliminary ones. The other 7 steps are what we call the HACCP principles. And the first step is you need to establish what is a HACCP team. And a HACCP team contains all experts within your premises, not just people in production, those in transport, those in purchasing, those in sales, maintenance. They form the HACCP team, and they have to be properly trained. Then describe the product. If it is a dairy mill, describe that product, the raw materials, the intended use, and also the unintended use. You have to properly describe that product. Then you identify the production process and production steps. You need to come up with a flow chart like that one and identify the source of hazard, where you are likely to the products to be contaminated. Then once you identify where the hazard may come in, you do hazard analysis. If it is micro, do likelihood and the consequences, and then you determine control measures. Then a CCP. In determination of CCPs, you look at, for example, let's say aflatoxin. If you take in raw materials that have high aflatoxin levels, there is no other process within the production chain that you can be able to reduce the levels of aflatoxin. And you know dilution is not allowed, such that you pick one sack with high levels and you mix with another sack with low levels. That one is not allowed. So you have to identify these critical control points. And then you come up with the critical limit. Critical limit is where you identify what are the control measures you need to put in place to ensure that you reduce or prevent or minimize that hazard to acceptable levels. And then, of course, you need to monitor those the measures you have put in place. And then in case the critical limits are exceeded, you need to come in, put up preventive measures or corrective actions. And you note the difference between a correction and corrective action. And then verification. Verification comes later on implementation of the controls. This is where you check and establish whether the measures you have put in place are working. If you are controlling salmonella, then you pick samples of the end product and you subject them to salmonella tests. If aflatoxins, you take the end product and you do aflatoxin tests. If heavy metals, you take the end products and you subject them to heavy metal analysis just to satisfy yourself that the measures you have put in place are working. And of course, documentation very important. The hazard analysis steps, the hazard plan itself, and the operating procedures. In Kenya, we have a standard we call KS 2543. This is the animal feed code of industry. Unfortunately, at East Africa level, is not yet transformed into a EAS standard, also not yet transformed into a RSO standard. That's another step that need to be taken. And it contains all those prerequisite programs, things to do with how your premises should be, the location of that premises, the design and layout of the premises, how the structure should be, fittings, plant and equipment, flow diagrams. You need to have proper flow diagrams. Then key personnel who should work in an animal feed establishment. What are the qualifications they need to have in place? An organizational structure, you need to have it. People working in those establishments, they need to have job descriptions, JDs properly written. You need to have employment contracts. You need to train personnel, ensure they are of good health, they are clean, and the facilities are available. Control of the feed ingredients, control of where you are sourcing your products, how you are doing storage, how the store should be like, where to store feed and unfeed materials, medicated and unmedicated materials. Those controls are all in KS 2543. You need to have operating procedures which should be documented, how you do packaging, labeling, transportation of the feed, inspection and control procedures, laboratory, physical inspections, what you need to do, sampling and testing, things you need to have in place. You need to do chemical analysis, microanalysis. Risk analysis is where the HACCP comes in. And then a product recall system. This one is very important. If your products are found to have high levels of contamination, then how do you recall them from the market? You need to have a recall procedure so that you can be able to recall all the products from the market. And of course, you need to document feed safety incidents, and then the actions that you take, and documentations and records. Apologies, I've moved very fast because I only had 20 minutes. And that's all. Thank you.